Good morning, campers. Welcome to Radio Camp Half-Load, a Percy Jackson read-along podcast. I'm your host, Zach.
And I'm B.
And this week, we're not reading a chapter. We're actually doing our mailbag episode. Woo!
I almost forgot this was a mailbag episode and read the chapters. Like, that's how
Did you?
new this is to me. Yeah, like, for a brief second, I was like, oh, gotta read the chapters. I'm like, wait a second. No, I don't.
See, I get anxious now when we're not reading. Like, sometimes we take, like, a week off or something. Oh, I gotta read the chapter. Like, oh, wait, no, I don't.
Yeah, I have to read about these Greek misadventures. To be fair, we're not reading a chapter, but we do have many pages of emails to get through, so it's almost like its own chapter.
What we will say is we have so many emails because we love you all so much, and ever since PGO was announced for Disney Plus, we have gotten such an influx of new people that are very enthusiastic about Percy Jackson and just want to ask us questions or just give us their own insights to the series. And we felt like, oh no, we don't want to like rush through the emails, so we decided to make it its own segment. And so far, it's working so far. I'm excited to see where we're going with this.
Yeah, we'll see how this goes. I'm like excited. Well, it was good to record an episode where we didn't have to do listener correspondence because I think we could like focus on the chapter, and then this way we can focus on the emails. It's going to be good. By the way, speaking of the Percy Jackson adaptation, did you see Rick Riordan's quote tweet that he responded to someone
about canon?
No, there was that. Well, that was a good one about talking about how if you have like a headcanon about different sexualities of characters, then that's up to you, which I thought was very cool and a very good response. And unlike a certain writer who we will not name or give any more attention to, but there was another one today about someone asking how soon the adaptation will be, and he like gave a generous estimate of 2 years. He said like at minimum. So that's kind of what we were thinking, but like I know we're all hype, but we still have a lot of time.
Well, yeah, and I think it's one of those things, like, before we get into the listener messages about that, is, like, I love that Rick Riordan's being very honest about this. Like, he has a very, like, transparent approach when it comes to a lot of stuff. Like, a lot of his tweets and stuff are so fascinating because he's, like, very genuine about his responses, especially with the PGO series.
Yeah.
And I know the show's a very long way ahead, and we could already start speculating. It's one of those things where people get super excited
Even like
about it.
Casting, it's like, I don't even know. Like, that's so far off because if they cast someone now, that person would be probably way too old for the role.
So from my personal experience working in television, working in movies and stuff, is that we will not see stuff until pretty much the cameras are going to be rolling, especially like currently right now with like COVID-19. They're like, I think actually today is the first day they actually started rolling again on Jurassic World Domination. I can't remember the name of that movie, Dominion.
I keep forgetting what it's called. All I know is that they have stations of hand sanitizer because that'll help.
One thing people have to keep in mind now is that yes, it was announced, but also at the exact same time, due to like COVID and stuff, things are going to be pushed back. So don't expect any news for a very, very long time because there are so many gears in the works when it comes to just making a project compared to like writing a book. Like even writing a book, you know, you write it, then you hand it to your editor. Maybe you might hand it to beta readers. Maybe you might tweak some stuff, first draft, second draft, third draft. But then when it comes to like, oh, we need $30-40 million to make this show, first, you have to find the money, and then you go from all the other steps with all the department heads. And I just want to say, it's a big process.
Yeah, no, it's a big process. I mean, in the tweet, Rick Riordan acknowledged the thing about, you know, the pandemic and everything else and how long it takes for him to write a book. So writing a script is even more involved. So it's going to be a little while. So yeah, I'm sure we probably got a few emails about that. I guess we'll just dive into it and see what people have to say. Though we do get a fair amount of emails just about like the plot and what we're talking about, or even up from, which I find is really fun. And since we've been getting new listeners, a lot of people are starting from the beginning. So we're getting like questions about like the early books that we have already finished.
And we forget about.
and I'm like, I don't know. What did happen in the first Percy Jackson book?
My favorite are like, hey, do you remember this one joke you made like 2 years ago? Let me think about it. I have to go back in time to like listen to it.
Oh, yeah. Like someone on Twitter was just like, when B said this, and I was like, that was like a few months ago. So much has happened since then. I don't know who I am or what I am.
I hate to say that I've been actually re-listening to our show because for me, sometimes I get bored and I'll listen to stuff. It just comes on And is it narcissistic to say that I've forgot most of what we've talked about to the point of where we'll say something so ridiculous that I'm laughing at our own jokes, but because I forgot everything, it's like fresh and new to me.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. Sometimes I'll overhear my sister listening to us, and I'll be like, "That was funny. I remember saying something like that. Look at me, I'm so clever." Anyway, let's stop patting ourselves on the back.
Oh, I'm patting myself on the back. Oh, I can give myself a back rub right now. Oh, this is nice. B, do you want to start with our listener emails? You want to read the first one? We'll go down through our gigantic mail pile. I feel like Santa Claus right now.
Yeah, it is. We're gonna have to, I guess, determine the nice listeners versus the naughty listeners. I think you're all nice listeners.
No, what are you talking? We'll do like a C.S. Lewis. We'll just arm all the children.
Oh, wait, what? Oh, well, okay, I see what you're saying because of Narnia. Got it. It's like, here is your sword, tiny child. Okay, got it. First email is from Nora, who says... Hey, Zack and B, I was reading a book where Percy Jackson tells actual myths. Yes, Rick Riordan did write this, and I came across something really interesting, at least to me. In the book, Percy Jackson's Greek gods, to hide little demigod Dionysus from Hera's wrath, Zeus gave Dionysus to a mortal family and told them to raise him as a girl. According to the book, he later became the god of people who were confused about their own gender. I don't know if you want to know that, but I found it interesting. Also, I would like Zach to say his favorite and least favorite Star Wars episode and why he has that opinion of them. Please don't go on a rant. Sticky out tongue emoji. Lastly, I got my brother to read PJO, and in the middle of the first book, I asked him about his favorite character. He said Luke, meaning he was semi-liked at some point. Not that it matters. I just thought it was interesting. Thanks, you guys, for making so many people happy. Have a wonderful life. Day seems kind of short. Thank you. Wow, the wonderful life. That's so much wonderfulness. Thank you, Nora. Okay, there's a lot to unpack in this one.
Thank you so much, Nora, for that. Oh man, where do you want to start with this? I have to actually have time to think about this.
The Dionysus thing is kind of interesting. That's not fun. I mean, maybe that explains a little bit why he's so freaking angry, because like that, that's something that'll make you angry.
Well, then I'm looking at like Dionysus. I'm looking at him more as like we consider him like the party god, but he's also kind of like the god of like sexuality because
that makes sense.
In like the Greek theater tradition, there were things like called satyr plays, which were just legitimately just sex comedies.
Yeah,
and
so I guess just in general, that's like connected to like gender and presentation. I could see that being the case. I don't really have much other to say about that because, like, I don't know a lot about mythology, as Sarah can attest to and complain about.
No, wholeheartedly when it comes to that as well with me. I don't know anything. I only know, like, the good bits, like the good canon versus the bad canon. But speaking of canon, okay, B, are you ready for this? My favorite and least favorite Star Wars, and I promise everybody...
Lightning round, here we go.
I promise everyone that I won't go on a rant about this. My favorite Star Wars movie, funny enough, 4th of July, I actually watched it. It was A New Hope, or just Star Wars. I've just always called it Star Wars. I think it's one of the best movies ever made.
So that's from the original...
Episode 4.
Episode 4. Oh, okay.
Obviously, then you kind of go into the order of Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. My least favorite Star Wars movie, surprisingly, people would probably, like, listening or be like, Last Jedi. No, not the worst Star Wars movie. I think Rogue One is probably one of the worst movies I've ever watched in my life. It's not that it's pessimistic.
I saw neither, so I have no opinion.
We watched Last Jedi. We watched it until you told me to turn it off.
Oh yeah, no, okay, I forgot about that. Well, I didn't watch the whole thing. I have no investment in the Star Wars like canon. I just can't muster any interest in it, in the world, in like I see discourse on Twitter. I'm like, I don't know how I'm supposed to feel about this. Like I just don't care. And I like, you do you, but I can't. It doesn't like resonate with me. So I really feel that way about Marvel too, where I'm just like, people talk about it and I'm like, I know that you are really hype about this, but I just like have no investment in it. So
yeah, no, like for me, like when it comes to like Rogue One, the reason why it's bad, because they'll always give a reason. Everyone's such a non-character that it's not a fun movie, and especially I think the thing that really put me off of the movie is seeing like a literally necromancy taking place on screen with like Peter Cushing coming back from the dead as Grand Moff Tarkin, and I was just super repulsed. Though my honorable mention, if Rogue One never existed, would have been The Rise of Skywalker. That movie's unwatchable. I'm sorry. I'll leave it at that.
So really all the new ones you're not a fan of?
No, but that's not kind of true because like The Rise of Skywalker and Rogue One have made me kind of appreciate and reevaluate a lot of the other movies. Like, when you don't have like a hodgepodge of like people, like too many cooks in the kitchen, you can have fun movies. I have more fun hanging out with my friends seeing Star Wars movies than actually seeing Star Wars movies now.
That makes sense, yeah. Well, I think that's part of it too. It's like the zeitgeist and people going to see it and stuff, which is kind of complicated in this day and age because now people can't go to the movies. Well, unless you want to go to like AMC, who like doesn't care about people wearing masks, in which case, I mean, it's your funeral. But
well, I got tickets to go see The Labyrinth in the drive-in, and I'm excited.
Oh yeah, well, drive-in, that's true. You can still do that, which we have a drive-in, like 40 minutes away.
I can't wait to like get a malt, get a popcorn, and see it with my best gal.
That's cute. I think that that answered everything. Yeah. That's all the questions in your email. Oh yeah, the mention about Luke, I guess, that's just sort of a stray observation. Yeah, he's supposed to be somewhat likable. That's like the point, right? Because it's such a twist at the end that he betrays Percy. Isn't
that like most cult leaders? They're supposed to be super charismatic in that way?
Yeah, and like also he's supposed to have like some like valid concerns, I guess. Like that's why he's such an interesting villain, because he tries to get Percy to go to his side because like they're coming from a similar place.
So moving on to the next email. Hello, this is Elena, a daughter of Poseidon. I've started to reread the books for the first time in a long time, and I was looking for something a little extra. Then I found your podcast, and my prayers were answered. Great and interesting commentary. I definitely prefer Heroes of Olympus series because it's an interesting and diverse cast. I also cannot wait until House of Hades, one of my favorite books, because the scene with Nico, not going to spoil anything.
Oh wait, is this about Nico being gay or whatever? Because I think I already know this.
Is that like a spoiler at this point? Even like Thomas Sanders talked about it.
Well, like recently, because of the Rick Riordan thing about talking about like sexuality with like Percy Jackson and everything, someone mentioned Nico being gay, so I was like, oh well. I mean, it does make sense. He seems way too into like My Chemical Romance to not be a little bit gay, at least.
Well, everyone's a little bit gay sometimes, especially when it comes to My Chemical Romance.
Yes, if you're emo, it's just sort of, you're positioned in that way. You heard it here first, folks.
See, that's not really a spoiler because it's not like the best held secret because everyone talks about it. So, Welp, as a bisexual girl reading my first gay character, Nico, in the 4th grade really helped me. Props for Rick for writing that in 2013. Welp, anyways, great podcast. Your friend, Elena.
What a nice email. Thank you.
Yeah. I love this email, especially like I remember... I can't remember. No. So I remember reading, I think that was House of Hades in the summertime because it came out. Well, I can't remember when it came out, but I read it in the summertime and I remember reading that and actually being really blown away by that revelation because it's such an interesting facet to have like a gay character, especially in 2013, that wasn't just a walking stereotype.
What I think is cool about Rick Riordan books, and I haven't really gotten to the point where he has like a lot of LGBT characters or whatever. I mean, so far he's like already gotten into like other identity things such as like disability, or we've talked about with Piper being indigenous and things like that. It's kind of cool to have a book that has characters who are incidentally LGBT, but like they're not. It's not a book about that. Like we have books like, like Love, Simon or whatever that are very much like a coming out narrative and it's all about that. And those have a place, but it's kind of one note. Like, queer people aren't just their coming out story. So I kind of like that, it's becoming more common to just have like queer people exist as characters in genre fiction and in other things other than like this is YA that's specifically about a coming out story.
Well, yeah, and I think that's like the first time that I read it, I thought I was so taken aback by it because it isn't just the coming out story, and then the end. It's pretty much like the best way to put it is like it's like the last book of the series, and you find out that Nico's gay. It's like it happens at the penultimate book, which is like okay, there's gonna be some more character weight and stuff along those lines. So I like that aspect because again, not all stories have to be like a coming out story. They can just be they're gay, and we can move on to the actual quest.
Right. Yeah. Like that's just like an aspect of them. Right. They're still in this universe where like Greek gods are real. So like that's the plot. They just happen to have other stuff going on. Because like sometimes the plot of your life isn't about the fact that you're gay or trans or bi or whatever. Like
it's just who you are. It's not part of
it's just who you are. Exactly. So that's like I think that's pretty cool. I think Rick Riordan goes about it in a very good way from like what I've heard him talk about. You know, people have been like happy with the way he's written it, which is like, you know, to be honest, as an author, he's like a cisgender heterosexual like older white guy, and he's like done his due diligence to be like sensitive with that kind of stuff. So I'm glad about that. Next email is from Emmy, who says, "Hey, it's Emmy again. Last week y'all mentioned main characters should be relatable, and not a lot of kids can relate to Piper because she's rich. I just want to say that I think that although Piper is rich, she's one of the most relatable characters for a lot of the kids. She may not be poor like Percy or a foster kid like Leo, but she does feel like she doesn't know her dad all that well, and she doesn't know her mom at all, and she's a minority kid. I think that's something a lot of kids can relate to because over 50% of American kids are divorced, or American parents are divorced. When a kid lives with a divorced parent, that parent usually has to work a lot more to provide for their kid, which may result in the kid feeling underappreciated or like they have to do something big to get their parents' attention, a lot like Piper did with the BMW. Another note, you also mentioned being interested in the coexisting of different pantheons within the Riordan universe. That's something that is explored within this series, but also within the Trials of Apollo series, and even briefly mentioned in Kane Chronicles and in Magnus Chase. Speaking of Magnus Chase, unless you're planning on reading King Chronicles next, Magnus Chase will need to come before Trials of Apollo, as events there enrich Trials of Apollo. I know, we just started the first book, so it's too early to be saying that, and y'all briefly went over flashbacks within Percy Jackson. While Rick doesn't use them as much as he does dreams, I think you'll find he begins to use them more as you read, and to much better effect than most dream sequences. This is probably going to get redacted, but whatever. I'm pumped for the next book because while there's a lot of room for analysis in this book, the next one absolutely explodes with it, and I can't wait for B's reaction and thoughts. Keep staying Horse and Mortalin around. Wow, that was almost exploded in my brain. Emmy, okay, let's start at the top.
So pretty much like I think the main thesis of this is like being really pumped up for Percy Jackson and all the other ones because the pantheons kind of coexist. I mean, that's not really like a spoiler, I would say.
I kind of got the gist of that from like the other books. Like even in this one, obviously there's something going on with like Roman versus Greek gods and stuff like that. So I see a hint of that. I'm not exactly sure how much they flesh that out, but I'm interested in how it works just in the canon of the universe.
Well, also it's one of those things like where Rick Riordan has to incorporate it that way, because if he didn't, it would be like weird territory where you say these gods are the definitive gods and everyone else doesn't quite exist.
No, exactly. That would be super weird, right? Especially like in America, where like a large proportion of people like believe in like the sort of like Christian God or like the Jewish God, whatever, like the sort of monotheistic belief, and then to be like, these are the real ones, the Greek God, like that could be a problem for a lot of children. Like their parents wouldn't be super thrilled about reading them. So I understand he has to be like sensitive and like understand to sort of have like a sort of diversity of gods that exist within his universe.
Well, especially like with the other part of the question, which is about like, parents divorce and all that stuff. Like, yeah, that's actually like a really good way to like look at kind of like the Greek gods and like how half the time like demigods don't know what to do. Is like a good way to look at it is like through the eyes of like someone being divorced, or maybe I mean
it's like similar, yeah, because they just have like sort of a broken, quote unquote broken home situation. I mean, Percy did too. I think that's pretty common for demigods. I'm trying to think about what we said about Piper. I don't think we ever said that like she's completely unrelatable. She's just like less relatable in some ways.
Well, no, I think because it's like we've talked about how like there's Rich Elizabeth Dare and Piper are both like these super rich people, and you have like this interesting facet where it's just like in a lot of like YA series, you always have the kids that are either like super uber rich or like the kid that like lives in like a trash can and eats beans all day.
Yeah, I feel like it's more common for a protagonist to like not have a lot of money because that's easier for more people to relate to, I feel like. But yeah, obviously, I mean, Piper has other things going on in her life. I'm not necessarily saying that she doesn't have problems in her life. I mean, that's like kind of the interesting thing about like intersectionality and like how you can be privileged in one regard and then not in another. You know what I mean? Like the example they give here is that she's indigenous, so it's like, yeah, she experiences like sort of prejudice on that axis, but she has money, which other people might not. So it's like, it's, It depends, you know what I mean? It's not like it's not like a mountain and you're at the top of it. It's like varying things based on all sorts of identity politics type stuff. I'm sure that tons of people relate to Piper. I think I still relate to Piper just as like a person, because she's like a complicated character who cares about her dad, but like at the same time is sort of alienated from him. Like, I'm sure any kid who's had like a fraught relationship with a parent can relate to that. It's not like she's completely full stop unrelatable, but just on the access of having a lot of money, I think a lot of people wouldn't relate to that, obviously, because not a lot of people have like famous actor dads.
I think you brought up like a really good point about like the kind of like the accessy when it comes to like poor versus like rich when it comes to like relatability, whereas like in like YA stories especially, like there's the two types where you have like the very down to earth kids, or you have almost like the not I don't want to use the word power fantasy, but like you have like these kids that like want to feel larger than life, like
Artemis Fowl or something.
Oh yeah, but you just read my mind. I was about to bring up Artemis Fowl. Like,
I didn't even read Artemis Fowl, but I know he's like rich as heck. Or the Baudelaires, honestly, like they're very similar in that regard, where like they have all sorts of family issues, but they're like rich as heck. Like they have a fortune.
But not necessarily that. I think when it comes to it, like if you're looking at Artemis Fowl, like it's like the power fantasy of like being like a rich, smart supervillain kid. Or like being like in the movie Spy Kids, like being spies.
Oh yeah, that's exactly, yeah. I mean, I feel like Spy Kids is spiritually connected to Artemis Fowl on some level. They have like a lot in common. But yeah, exactly. I feel like it's either that or you're like Charlie Bucket. You know what I mean?
Cheer up, Charlie.
No, please don't. I will get it stuck in my head and I'll want to die. But
this entire year is just Cheer Up, Charlie on constant repeat.
Like as a year, it really is. It truly is.
It's the only song in Willy Wonka that I ever skipped. Like, actually, I got to go see Willy Wonka live, B, and when Cheer Up, Charlie started playing, like, I'm gonna go.
Everyone started falling asleep.
No, I got up and walked out of the theater for the 4 minutes of my life that I could like go to the restroom and get some popcorn.
You're like, I could
no, and I did that. My friends started
one.
laughing because like I told them what was gonna happen. But yeah, you have like going back to it. I've always found like it's fascinating with Piper. Like she has again, like I think you brought up like a really good point about how like she might be really wealthy, but then like you have like the problem of like people being not so good to her, or like racism and stuff. And that's something that I love that Rick Riordan's starting to really explore about that, rather than how happy-go-lucky everybody is. It's like they actually explore race, they actually explore like disabilities and what that actually means.
Yeah. Or even Rachel Elizabeth Dare, who's like pretty across the board privileged. She does have like a certain lack of autonomy because she's a child too, which is like another thing that like can still be relatable to kids. Like even if like she has like everything handed to her on a silver platter, she does have the pressure of her dad like sending her off to the school she doesn't really want to go to and all this kind of stuff, and like kind of being controlling about her life. And that's something that I think across the board, like as a theme in Percy Jackson, is very relatable, where like these kids feel like at the whim of like fates or like these authority figures that are telling them what to do. And that's like that, I feel like that's a core tenet in like Rick Riordan's books that like make them relatable, is that they're about like being a kid who for one way or another like doesn't have like control over a situation, because that is the case when you're a kid.
Yeah, no, totally. I think as well as like one of the other major themes of this is almost like the feeling of being abandoned in many ways, like you're being abandoned by your parent. I think that might be an interesting study to do about like the correlation between parents abandoning children and like looking at that and seeing how they grow up, and then looking at it through the eyes of Percy Jackson, because they're very similar. But like when you're abandoned, you just find like, you know, you can still be yourself and have, you know, anyone can be family, quote unquote, and it doesn't have to be blood to be family, as we see in Percy Jackson all the time. A lot of the campers, even though they're not biologically related, I guess technically they are, but we're not going to get into that. But like they're still technically family in that way. They see themselves as that way. And I like that when it comes to Piper, she already has kind of like this feeling of like belonging in many ways, and they've already gone on the quest as we've seen them going to Quebec and dealing with their issues, but yeah, there's kind of like this weird tight-knit family.
Yeah, I mean, they all have varying issues, which is also the case of a book that has like 3 protagonists instead of 1, is we get like different perspectives and different struggles based on like, you know, who they are as people. Like obviously Leo has like a very specific like backstory and home life that he's coming from. Jason does too, though he doesn't remember it. And then Piper, has like the issues with her dad, you know, and like being like mortified that people recognize who he is and all of that. So like there's just like so much going on that it's like there are many ways in which you can relate to a character that might not have to do with how much money they have, but like that one thing isn't like super relatable, obviously. Like not everyone is like, you know, the rich kid of a famous guy, but it's written very like compellingly, so that like helps you relate to it because you see where she's coming from, but you might not like actually directly empathize unless, I don't know, are you the child of a famous person listening to this right now? Maybe you are.
Yeah, I mean, they even show like the problems of, like being the child of a famous person. Like it isn't all glitz and glamour, and I like that they kind of like Rick Riordan kind of shows that a lot. Is that like you could be super rich, but you could be super duper duper miserable the entire time, and they have. It's true that like rich people can, you know, obviously they can solve their problems with money, but in this case, like with Rachel Elizabeth Dare and Piper, they have a different type of problems, I feel like.
Yeah, exactly.
So our next email is from Mitchell. Dear Zack and B, I've been an avid of all Rick Riordan's work since I was about 8, just before Mark of Athena came out. I am now 16 years old in Australia, and this has been an amazing podcast to listen to as I have reread Percy Jackson and Heroes of Olympus series 10 times and love reliving them as much as possible. I only found this podcast about a month ago and halfway through The Titan's Curse, and I'm about to listen to my favorite chapter, I Have a Damn Problem. Can't wait until you get to House of Hades, which is my favorite book in Heroes of Olympus. Thank you for the amazing content. It's been so good, especially B reads them for the first time. It's really cool as there are some things pointed out that I haven't even considered despite my numerous rereads, as well as the books. I also love the musical and hyped of the live action series and hope that it just does justice to it. Thanks for the amazing times. Goodbye, and keep staying mortal, Mitch. P.S. I will probably email again once I'm caught up.
Okay, if you're getting caught up, then you're probably listening to this. Hello, Mitch. What a nice email. If you like the musical, I hope you like the few musical episodes that we did, talking to a few people who worked on that and us seeing it. That was really fun.
I've noticed that we've gotten like a lot of emails of people like, wow, you've really like opened my eyes to a lot of things. Like, I think this is just our hours and hours and hours of just rereading and just loving literary analysis in many ways.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's like the funny thing about being like very new to all this is I'm just like coming at it completely like as an adult, just from my perspective. So I don't have like the sort of nostalgia lens of like seeing it based on what like I perceived it as a kid or whatever. And I think that sometimes produces like takes that like I would have never had if I had read it when I was like 10 or whatever, which is kind of interesting. Because like I feel like we get emailed a lot where it's just like, oh, I never really thought of it that way. It's like, yeah, well, because you probably read the books when you were like, you know, a teenager or like a tween, and you think about books differently at that age, and then it kind of informs you later. I mean, I could say that with Unfortunate Events. It's like been very different being completely news to this as opposed to with Unfortunate Associates, me like that being my favorite book series and having like a lot of like specific opinions about it for years before I did a podcast about it.
Especially like when it comes to it, like the power of nostalgia is such a powerful thing. People like don't seem to think about. It's like when you look at something like you're nostalgic about, sometimes you might not take it objectively. I know we've gotten emails about if you don't like Percy Jackson, stop reading the books. That's not the case. Like we'll talk about things that, you know, work and don't work, but we like it.
Right. I find this so funny because it's not like I hate Percy Jackson. I criticize things about it, but I obviously am doing the show. If I was like very miserable, this would be a different podcast. It would be sort of like the kind of podcast people do where they like hate watch something and they just like, you know, complain about it the whole time. That is definitely not what I feel like my approach to Percy Jackson is. It's critical but favorable, you know?
Yeah, no, that's not the case at all. It's like when we are critical about Percy Jackson, we're talking about, okay, why does it work sometimes and why doesn't it work sometimes? It's like, same as like for me, I look at it the same way as like how I review movies. Like if I say it's a bad movie, I will explain in excruciating detail why it's bad rather than say it's bad because that's not a review and that's not how you do things. But I like that we've kind of opened people's eyes up to like literary analysis and how amazing it can actually be at times.
I mean, I've had this conversation plenty of times with just like about the way that I read too. I think I kind of was always that way, but especially like after I went to college and did like a literature major, is that I kind of like can't help but like analyze when I read, and sometimes like people look at me like I'm a little bit nuts because I'll be like, well, clearly this represents this, and then, you know, even you sometimes who like read it as a kid, you'd be like, oh, that's a metaphor, and I'm like, well, I mean, like, to me, like, everything's a metaphor. I'm, like, kind of like that annoying English teacher who's like, but it could be a metaphor. And, like, even if it wasn't written that way, you can read it that way, and it sort of adds a richness or an interesting perspective on the text. And I don't know, I get really, like, annoyed with those memes that, like, make fun of that, you know, analysis.
Oh, the curtains
or, like,
are blue?
Exactly. Like, yeah, sometimes the curtains are blue, or, like, you know, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar, as Freud said. But, like,
okay.
You know what I mean? But like
Yeah.
sometimes, I don't know, sometimes there is like a significance to certain things. And I don't know, that's why I like podcasting, because I get to just talk about my little precious observations that I make.
No, exactly. That's the reason why we podcast, listen up, because we can talk about this all day, every day.
That's what I did in class, though. That's the thing. That's what I did in like literature classes, was just, they were like, okay, close read this. What does this mean? This one, like, we would like literally like look at 2 sentences, a paragraph, and like dissect everything that could entail like culturally within the context of the rest of the book. And it can like totally change the way that you look at a text.
Especially like when I went to like film school and stuff, like seeing movies, like now I look at movies completely different because I'm looking at it both from like production side, but also like from a storytelling element, because you realize there is so much work both to a book and to making films, and there's like a language to films as well as there's one to books. Like I switch between both and both because that's just who I am as an individual. But like even when you look at Percy Jackson, I'm looking at it now, especially like based off of adaptation, like how it will work as an adaptation. And it's so much more fun to think of it that way, like looking at it like logistically, rather than like, I hope this scene's in there and they have all this money, but I'm looking at it, it's like, okay, what if they only had like $30 million for the whole show? What would they do with it? And that's kind of the thing that I'm really excited for the PGO series when it drops on Disney Plus in 2022 or 2023.
Or whenever we're, you know, allowed to come out of our bunkers, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. But thank you so much for that amazing email. We really appreciate it. Be you ready for the next one?
I sure am. Next one is from Alexis. Are you Alexis from Schitt's Creek? Sorry, I've just been rewatching that and I keep picturing her. Hey, Zack and B. I'm an 11-year-old. Okay, so definitely not that Alexis. From New Mexico, and I love the podcast. I found it while you guys were on the last episode of the Percy Jackson series. Zach, there is a YouTube cosplay channel I think you will like. Hazel the writer. B is not allowed to see it. Spoilers. I find it funny when Zach tells B what is happening in the next chapter, and they don't even notice, like the chapter before Percy sees a guinea pig, you say something about a spa, and B just agrees. Again, you guys are great. Keep staying mortal. That's hilarious. Yeah, I don't even like remember those things. You're very good at misdirecting me, because sometimes you say like a real ridiculous non sequitur. I'm like, no way is that part of the book, and then it is like a thing that's a part of the book. And then other times you say a ridiculous non sequitur, and I'm like, wait, okay, that might mean something, and then it doesn't. It was just a weird thing you said. So like you're getting me in all directions, and I have no idea. And sometimes I like straight up guess exactly what happens, and other times my theories are like completely off base, like in the opposite direction. So like I'm kind of all over the place as like, you know, an outsider to Percy Jackson and whatever Rick Riordan books in general. I'm just kind of, you know, throwing enough stuff against the wall and hoping something sticks, I guess.
For me, it's like, it's so easy for me to like do misdirection, because one part of my job used to be all about misdirection, but also like, for me, I had to like always sign like NDAs when I was doing projects and stuff, and there are technically ways to get around them. You just have to be very, very mischievous. When it comes to misdirection, sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong, but for the most part, I like to like, I'm about to spoil something for you, B, and that is like sometimes I like to nudge you in the right direction when it comes to certain things.
Oh, I'm sure that I get that just all the time. Like sometimes like, but what about this? Or you're like, I'll like forget a specific like thing about like a god or whatever that we've already met, and you'll be like, remember this person? I'm like, yes, that person. And then like it gets me in the right direction, because sometimes I'm like really way off, and I see you nudging me, like herding me like a cat towards the right answer.
See, I'm imagining it more like we like I blindfolded you and you're at the pinata, but you're turned towards the audience of people with the bat and like, no, B, no.
Yeah, just, and everyone's ducking and I'm just swinging and swinging. You're like, okay, Bryce, just come on. Let's aim towards the paper donkey, less towards the people.
Oh, man. But it's also got to give hype because this person's from New Mexico, my birthplace, and I love New Mexico. So thank you so much. I'm going to try checking out that channel. I have so many YouTube channels that I look at. Sometimes I do cosplay ones. I've been really getting into like a lot of video essays recently. So it'd be interesting to get like a different change of pace and not talk about like fantasy literary theory at times. So we have another email, and first I'm going to apologize if I butcher your name. Mary Lou's or Mary Lou?
One of them.
Hi, Zack and B. I just found out about this podcast and it's absolutely amazing. I just reread the first series since a long time because of the Disney Plus announcement, and I've been binge hearing? ? Yeah, I guess binge hearing is something that I've heard. Yeah. All of your episodes, hearing you discuss each chapter is really fun and makes me think of many details of this book that I never think of before. Yeah, there we go, B. I don't want to make any questions because I'm just in book 3 and I don't know all the questions you've already answered, but I just wanted to say thank you for your work because it's really just so good, and I'll keep hearing as fast as I can, and I can hopefully hear you guys soon. I will get up to date. Also, I'm a daughter of Apollo, so yeah, thanks so much, and keep staying mortal.
Thank you for your email. That's very sweet. Hopefully you're caught up by now and listening to this. Hello. Welcome to our first mailbag episode. You're in it.
Hey, how you doing? Hope everything's going well. B, my favorite things like when we get emails from people that say, you just make my day. You guys are so funny.
I don't even have a question. I just have to say something nice. I'm like, oh, great. Now I can't even deflect your compliment by answering questions. I have to just accept it like a normal person.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's like the equivalent of like a head pat. It's like, oh, thank you so much for this head pat.
Here you go. Oh, yeah. Wow.
We have some of the best listeners when it comes to like just people sending in emails just saying you awesome.
Yeah, you guys are like extremely nice. Like as much as like sometimes we're like, might respond to somebody who's like angry for whatever reason, and believe me, there's been a handful. Like the vast majority of emails we've read on the show have been incredibly, incredibly nice and so sweet, and like especially like coming at it as like an outsider who wasn't a part of this fandom to begin with, like I'm glad that you guys like what I have to say, and aren't angry, or at least too angry at me for having like differing opinions and stuff. Hi, Radio Camp Half-Blood. Oh, sorry, this is from Liz? Yeah, from Liz. He says, hi, Radio Camp Half-Blood. I haven't emailed in a while. Corona has been busy for me with my job, but I have been trying to listen when I can, and I was able to catch up recently. But because I'm catching up, I just wanted to say how cool it is that you're both not only finished PJO, but are moving on to Heroes of Olympus. I started listening to you both when you were 5-ish episodes into Lightning Thief, and I really admire how much you two have evolved on this podcast. Congratulations! ! Anyway, so on your most recent episode, you were talking about the weird YA trend for female character transformations, and I thought back to a series to think about if Annabeth has ever had that moment, and at first I couldn't think of anything, but then I remembered the Cersei scene in Sea of Monsters. I almost didn't recognize her. She was wearing a sleeveless silk dress, like Cece's, only white. Her blonde hair was newly washed and combed and braided with gold. Worst of all, she was wearing makeup, which I never thought Annabeth would be caught dead in. I mean, she looked good, really good. I probably would have been tongue-tied if I had said anything except read. But there was something totally wrong about it. It just wasn't Annabeth. Well, this isn't an uncomfortable feeling as Piper. I'm glad you pointed it out. I've never liked that moment. We don't really even know how Annabeth feels about it at all, and I'm not sure. I like that it's like Harry's internal commentary on Hermione Yule Ball debut with a guy that's at the very least 4 years older than her, and she's a minor, and he's not, in case JKR wasn't problematic enough. Woof, I did not realize how old Victor Crumb was. But you're right, the female character transformation thing is weirdly common. I think this trip stemmed from our collective societal obsession with the take off her glasses, shake her hair down Cinderella transformation moment. That's so true. It feels very of a certain time, personally, as someone who's a big fan of Rick's portrayal of well-rounded female characters. This feels like out of place, but I wonder if it's something Rick would change if he would rewrite his books. Also, because I missed a few of the episodes, I wanted to ask this question, but that I never really had time for. Selena and Clarice are not even veiled comparisons to Achilles and Patroclus, however, both are in heterosexual relationships at the time of the story. Achilles and Patroclus is a very prominent gay story. Does that feel particularly queerbaity to either of you? I haven't really made up my mind either way, but I'd be interested in your insight. Forever a loyal listener, Liz. Wow, that's a densely packed email. Okay,
We'll break it down into like bite-sized chunks. Let's get into like the female transformation stuff because again,
we kind of have already talked about this.
We've talked about this before.
We know why it's popular, right?
Yeah, no, it's like the nerdy girl turned into like a hot girl.
I mean, like, not to say that Rick Riordan is misogynist, but I think our society is, and like the worth of women is seen as like very much tied to like how they look, and that's, I mean, it very clearly is like related to that. People are very interested in being like, oh, she was frumpy and now she's not frumpy. Like that contrast has like been in a million things, as you mentioned, you know, the take off your glasses, she's all that moment, you know.
See, it's like a weird thing because the way that I look at this is there's never like the male equivalent of like the female transformation scene, but
that's the thing.
There's never like the male equivalent of like the female transformation scene. The main reason why is usually when it comes to like the, I would quote unquote male transformation scene, it's always either done off screen. I was thinking about like Conan the Barbarian, like he just in the movie. His transformation scene of him
like
being
a weak guy gets like, or like Captain America even, I'm thinking like he's all of a sudden buff.
In Conan, it's hilarious because he gets strapped to a wheel that does literally nothing and he spends like the next 40 years doing it.
I feel like that's a little bit different though also because so much of that is like wrapped up in like physical strength too. Well, like I feel like there's a specific like I'm thinking of like teen movies, for example, where this is really common, where like some nerd girl ends up being quote unquote beautiful in the end, which is like, that's a complicated way to phrase that.
No, I think the best way to put it is The Breakfast Club with like...
The Breakfast Club, exactly, with the Ali Sheedy character. There's tons of other examples where like some character gets like a glow up. I feel like even that was in Stranger Things, which is like kind of like a spiritual like successor to those kinds of 80s movies, but same idea.
Well, no, another example, if we're going through like 80s movies, there's always the Goonies, like there's the girl with the glasses.
Oh, there's tons. Yeah. You could like list endless examples.
I think we also have like this weird fascination in our, at least in our culture, with like the Cinderella glow up, where like they have like your fairy godmother makes you beautiful for a short time to win the man.
There's like something weird, like where people are obsessed with this idea that like, you know, you thought she was ugly, but really she just needed a makeover. And now look, she's available to you. You can sexualize her. And it's like kind of gross and weird. And I think about like, if you have the same kind of story, even like you said, like 80s teen movies or whatever, what happens with male protagonists in those scenarios isn't that they get a glow up, it's that the people around them suddenly think they're cool. You know what I mean? Like they don't like get a makeover. Everyone's just like, wow, we learned to appreciate you for who you are. But it's like, you gotta have like makeup in order for that to happen if you're a girl. And it's just like weird to me. And I don't know.
Well, it's the same as like in a lot of like, I'm looking at this through like the monomyth, or at least like an ancient storytelling. Like there used to be this thing where it's like the men had to prove themselves. That was when they became quote unquote a man. Whereas when it came to a woman, I'm not going to get into it, but there's only two ways for a lady to become a woman in many ways. And it's both of those have to do with like, they've got hidden puberty and things like that.
It's like about puberty or something too, which sometimes is the case. Yeah, there's sometimes like the sidebar version of that, which I think is kind of related to Piper too, where it's like where the tomboy wears a dress, where like you'll have like Scout Finch where she wears a dress and everyone's like, ooh, and like both are like, well, you look very nice, but they're like, she's also getting teased because like that's just like not who she is. And that very much like probably resonates with a lot of like gender nonconforming or like trans kids, where it's like sometimes that you have like a very like uncomfortable situation as you're a kid where you're like, you have to go to some event and you're forced to wear like an outfit that you don't want to. And maybe that is a relatable thing about that scene with Piper, where you could be like, oh yeah, I remember a moment where I felt like everyone was looking at me and I didn't want that kind of attention, or I didn't want to present myself in that way. But it's still like the way that it's written could have been better. I don't know, maybe if it was written during a different time, or if he had like maybe had some sort of sensitivity reader, it would have like just been approached a little bit differently. Not maybe cut out the scene, but just like the language around it might have been different.
Well, I'm interested to see like what happens when Piper actually meets Aphrodite, because I feel like that's going to be like two nuclear weapons going off, because you have people with like such blunt personalities. I think that's the best way to put it, of like getting at it, because I feel like there's going to be some type of conflict about it, because
She'd be like, why the heck did you do that? You know?
yeah, no, there's going to be something like that, because the one thing I've noticed, especially in these chapters, is every chapter there's Piper, she keeps bringing it up that she's like still being forced to have like these magical reasons.
Like she still looks like that because it's like lingering for a while, which is like, oh, do we really have to put up with this for more time? Like, couldn't have just been like made a point about Aphrodite and like, I don't know, how she doesn't want to be like given attention or whatever just because of the way that she looks. Obviously it like represents a certain way that like women are treated in general, and like how whatever, like even like the idea of like women in the workplace have to like dress a certain way to be taken seriously, and that's kind of the case with Piper, where like everyone was like kind of being a jerk to her, and then they're all paying attention to her just because she looks different, and that drives me crazy. Anyway, I like your observation with that, connecting it to the whole, you know, take the glasses off trope, because like it's all connected. It's like the same thing basically.
Yeah, no, it's all very much the same thing, because you can look at it, you can point to any major mainstream storytelling, and chances are 9 times out of 10 they have this type of scene in anything. I know in sitcoms it happens all the time with the would they, won't they.
Do you know what my favorite version of this is, though, that is like awesome? Is there's an episode of Hey Arnold with Helga Pataki where she tries to fit in at the sleepover, and she's like wearing makeup and whatever, and she's just like, we don't need wrinkle cream, we don't need makeup, we're 9 years old, and she's like yelling, and I feel that in my soul. Helga, you get it. I just like that totally completely subverted that trope of like, oh, like the frumpy girl gets a makeover and she's like, no, this isn't me, I don't want to do that. And I don't know, that was like a very empowering, cool thing to watch when I was a kid.
Yeah, and that's the great thing, especially like now I think there's going to be like a diverge from this type of trope very, very soon when it comes to this, because anyone can dress the way they want to.
Right, yeah, I feel like clothes are just going to be less and less gendered in the future, and hopefully, I don't know, like makeup shouldn't be so compulsory when it comes to like girls. I mean, even within our lifetimes it's been that way, or like even like especially within the lifetime of like my parents, like it used to be way more common that like women had to wear makeup all the time.
Well, also like when I look at it as like when it comes to clothing it kind of is like our physical representation of who we are. Like if I look at me, if you just look at me on the street, I'm always wearing some type of like weird nerdy shirt or something. It's like pretty much like this is who I am. But the second like I have to wear a suit or something, like what the heck are you doing, Zach? That's not you at all. And it's like one of those things, like when you have like that, you lose that sense of control of yourself, like losing clothes or, you know, being forced to wear something.
Yeah, it's about expressing yourself, and it just, there was an intentionality behind that scene, but it still grossed me out. It just did. And then I guess, okay, maybe we should move on to the other question about the second sort of question in the email was about the Achilles and Patroclus thing, which I can't really speak to that because, like, I don't know, like, a ton about mythology. I do know that, like, a lot of, like, gay men see Achilles as, like, sort of a representation of, like, male, like, queerness. And I guess if their stories mirror each other, which, again, I don't know how much they mirror each other, so I can't, like, speak to that exactly. It could have been that Rick was doing that intentionally. I'm, like, taking your word for it that that's what he did. I don't know if he, like, knew the implications there, or maybe he was doing that intentionally and just, like, didn't make it canon, or who frickin' knows. Queerbaiting is, like, I feel like
it's a loaded term when it comes to, like, a lot of things.
It's a loaded term. It's also, like, I feel like you'd have to, like, know so much about mythology and, like, how that was coded to assume that Selena and, like, I don't know, to assume that Selena and Clarice were, like, set up at all in a way where they might be, like, love interest because of, like, oh, like, I see the parallels between this other Greek story that happens to, like, represent queerness. I don't know. Like, it feels more like an Easter egg or something and less, like, queer baiting, because I could understand, like, why you would feel that way, and I'm not even, like, shooting down the idea that is, like, a relationship that would make sense in the books, but it's kind of more like, I feel like queer baiting has to consist of, like, more obvious indicators where it's like, oh, look, will they, won't they, you know what I mean? Like, the examples I, like, think of are, like, people accuse, like, Sherlock of this or whatever, like, other shows that, like, make intentional choices that are like very, very close to making something like that canon, but then they like walk it back because they don't want to like have to face the repercussions of having a canonically queer character, so they just like make it ambiguous, which I don't think like Rick would do that, because obviously he ends up making Nico gay, and maybe that's different because he wrote that last whatever the book that he comes out like a few years later, and that is a different circumstance. But queer baiting might be a bit of a strong term, I guess.
See, I've always found that like queer baiting is like a very loaded term, the same way as like it's like a powder keg, because you can say anything's queer baity, which is the problem is like when you have
it's like if you see two characters and you think that they'll be good together, that doesn't necessarily mean it's queer baiting if they don't make it canon.
No.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it might be true, they might have chemistry, you know, but that doesn't mean that they're like intent, because I think you have to like look at the definition. It's like it has to be like a willful and intentional like sort of strategizing of the person making the content, who's like, I'm gonna make this as close to queer coded as possible. Like, and the thing about queer people also is like you are kind of inherently sort of, you have this antenna where you see yourself in things that they're not necessarily you exactly, you know, because you don't live in a culture where representation is all over the place. So you look for representation where you can. And people know this. And so queer baiting functions on the idea that you're going to pick up on the subtle queer coding that they're going to put in these characters, but other people won't. Straight people will not. Trans people will not, whatever. And they will not be alienated. So it's like kind of trying to like have your cake and eat it too. And I don't feel like that's what's happening with those characters, just because I don't think he was like, and this is exactly like, you'll know that Achilles and Patroclus, like, even if you were queer, you might not necessarily like know enough about mythology, like piece that together. It's just like a lot of layers for it to be queer baiting, if that makes sense. But I don't know. I'd be interested to hear your response to that, because like that's just like my glance at it. I'm not super familiar with that story, or like how close it is to like Selena versus Clarice, and like how they are as a dynamic. We'll see. I don't know.
So from my understanding, this is just how I've heard of things, like especially like with this, is like I didn't even know about this until we started doing our show, meaning like it's possible like Rick Riordan just was like he wasn't looking at that myth and being like, oh, these are like these queer characters. Like I think that new study with like Achilles and stuff is very recently, but we've kind of started to have those conversations about it,
right? Like finding the queer codedness in that, even in that character, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, no, you also have to like look at like when these books were written. This was like 2010. We've come a long way since 2010. We're a whole decade in, and now there's this new thing where people are like trying to interpret things. They're having a lot of reevaluations on a lot of literary work, if it's, you know, written by like a queer author, or, you know, is it LGBTQA friendly?
Yeah. The thing is, like, yeah, Rick could have just been like, he knows about mythology, but he might not have like realized how much that specific story even was queer coded, and like what he was doing when he did that. Or who knows, like he could have just been like, wow, what's better than this? Gals being pals. Like, let's just make this narrative because like they're really close friends. Like some people look at Achilles and Patroclus and think that they were just really good buds. And like maybe that's just like the weird, you know, like cis straight blinders on where you just like see what you assume. But I don't know. And
I think that's like a really good point to bring up there, is like sometimes, like I know this is a good example of this, is like Rick Riordan. Actually, I remember like he tweeted about this and actually got taken out of, I think, one of the Magnus Chase books. Is like someone's like, oh yeah, like Tinkerbell's like my spirit animal, and someone's like, please don't say that. Like, you know what? You're right. I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking about like how like popular culture with people saying that.
Right, like the way people said it in a meme way or whatever.
Yeah, like in a meme way. And it's like, you know what? You were right about that. I've taken it out of my books. And I'm sure that's like the exact same thing here when it comes to this. Is like, well, I'm going to try to mirror these myths, but I wasn't thinking about like maybe in the context of them, you know, being, you know, queer in that way. And obviously we have queer characters later on. We have characters that are, you know, trans, non-binary. We have everything recently. And it's one of those things where it's like, is it queer baity? I mean, there's a possibility it is, but I think it's highly unlikely that it is.
I think Rick Riordan as a person has also earned a little bit of benefit of the doubt because he has been, like you said, dedicated to like having diverse characters in other respects and like making characters canonically and clearly queer, canonically and clearly disabled, whatever, like being diverse and understanding of like a vast array of types of people. And I don't think if he was, say, another popular children's author who maybe hasn't earned very goodwill amongst people as far as canonically making characters diverse, then that would be different, because then I would be like, oh, it would be in his best interest, like that would be like something he would do, where he would walk back something that was queer because he was like afraid of like pushback or something. He clearly isn't afraid of that because he's done it before, you know.
Here's something that's actually happened like really recently, B, where I think it was 2 days ago, someone was talking about Artemis and stuff, and they had like this huge like open letter to Rick Riordan, and it's like, thank you so much for sending this to me. I'm willing to do the research, and like my interpretation was a little different because like, you know, I'm only so used to like not I won't say narrow-mindedness, but like I only have such a broad range of like understanding of like the LGBTQA community in many ways. Like, you know, I'm not really a part of it. I'm like a white dude and stuff. And he's willing to put in the time and effort, especially when it comes to, is it something he could have put in later on? Yeah, like he does have the ability to change that in the Disney Plus show if he wants to. Like, that's something that he could easily do if he wanted to re-put that in there.
Yeah, that's true. Or like, yeah, exactly. In like we've talked about in the round table, where it's like he could make that canon while still not backtracking certain characters. Like we said, the maybe not so great, like weird trade-off of like getting rid of a black character to make characters queer, that would like be kind of a weird trade-off. So like I feel like he could do both, maybe, but like getting rid of Beckendorf entirely would be like kind of bizarre and not too tasteful.
It's a catch-22, and it's one of those where like as we examine modern stuff. I think the further we go in the future, even like our examinations could easily be re-examined later on, because things that we say now might not be, you know, correct 20, 30, 40 years from now. And even though when it comes to books, like they're such like a stagnant in time, that it's one of those like, should we examine them? Yes. Can you make your own interpretation? I mean, Rick Riordan legitimately just said, yeah, you know what? If it's canon in your eyes, it's canon for me. Like, there's things like, if you want to say it's canon, go do it. Say it's canon. That's what they did. We're never going to tell you you're wrong about it. we can only examine our own thoughts and feelings when it comes to it. B, you want to read the next email?
Hey, Zack and B, my name is Derek, and I'm 25 years old. I've been a big fan of the show. Every week while I work, I listen to the chapters you guys are going to talk about, just to refresh my memory of what has happened. Then when the new episode drops, I listen to it also. It really helps the day go by faster. Also, as a person who grew up on Disney Channel as well, I love the references you guys make. Have a great day and keep staying mortal.
Thank you so much for that lovely email. It's amazing.
Thank you, Derek. Nice, short and sweet one.
Yes. Yeah, totally. So the next email is from Alex. Hey, Zack and B, I love your podcast. I'm 11 years old and just started listening to the podcast last month, and it's amazing. Thank you so much, Alex.
Thank you, Alex. Another short one. We're just like flying through these. Next one. Hey, Zack and B, I've been listening to your podcast from almost the start, and I love it. Percy Jackson is my favorite book series. I can't wait for the TV show and the last Trials of Apollo book. My favorite character in Lost Hero is Leo. Who's yours? I can't wait for you to start reading the next book. It's really good. That's all from me. Keep staying mortal, from Ashton.
We'll do this one very quickly. Let's do rapid fire. Who's your favorite character so far?
Favorite character? That's hard. Piper. I'm going to say Piper for now.
Yeah, mine's also Piper. Like, I really like how relatable she is.
Though Leo is a close second. It's hard for Jason to be one of my favorite characters because, like, truly, he doesn't know anything about himself. So I'm just like, I don't know who you are. He is intriguing, but yeah, Piper, her backstory is really fascinating. The whole thing with, like, her dad and whether or not she's going to betray everyone, all of that. Just her, she's a rich character, like, literally and figuratively. She's got a lot going on in, like, her backstory that I find fascinating. So that one so far, I guess.
So we have an email from Colin. I've read all the books more than 5 times at least. I love your guys' detail and up-to-date topics, and I want more about Disney Plus and Rick Riordan's comeback. Colin, I don't think Rick Riordan has a comeback. He's already on his stride right now.
Don't call it a comeback. He's been here for years. Yeah, he's constantly prolifically writing and doing things. Yeah, they can't update much because it's like we said, kind of far away as far as when the series is going to come out. So we'll update you when we can, and obviously the Twitter and everything will be retweeting any kind of news. And there's definitely tons of podcasts you can follow that have like more specifically like a news slant to them, where they keep up to date with all of like the nitty gritty about the adaptation, other stuff in the Riordan universe.
Yep. Be you ready to read the next one?
Yes. Okay. Just want to say I absolutely love your podcast. I enjoy the concepts of the books and have always been very wrapped up in mythology, specifically of the Grecian kind, I guess. Zach knows that reference. V doesn't. Oh, gracious? Okay. I don't know. I'm dumb. I finished the first series in about a week because I was bored and I didn't have much to do. See also Quarantine. My grandparents bought me The Heroes of Olympus and Trials of Apollo for my 11th birthday, and I kind of binge read both series in about 2 weeks. I love the distraction from my daily life of me being holed up in my room without being able to leave the house. I love hearing your input and take on the series because I happen to take stuff very seriously. As my name is Daphne and so originates from Greece, you guys are the best, and I can't help but laugh in this turbulent time. I have taken the quiz for parentage multiple times, and as everyone I know says I'm Athena, I only get Poseidon. Anyway, I was wondering, maybe as a mini episode, do you guys think you could do The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill? It's a really good read and has quite a bit of magic and wonder in it. Love you guys. Sorry for the long review. Keep staying mortal, etc. Best wishes, Daphne. P.S. For B, honey, you got a big storm coming. That's a very funny P.S. It's even funnier that I was the one reading this one. Okay, mini episode. Yeah, I mean, like...
We could.
We have a few bonus episodes. We've been meaning to do a few books that we have waiting in the wings. Maybe if we, I don't know, turn our attention to the Patreon a little bit, that's a possibility. We always get book recommendations, so I feel like maybe we should like make a thread or something and have people like vote on like ones that they're most interested in, or like figure something out, because there's definitely a few things that we've been meaning to read, and there's also obviously a few Patreon tiers that make us read certain things, including Harry Potter. So, you know, that's something to look into.
We'll get there eventually. We'll figure it out. It's one of those things that we just have to look at what we can do. We've been actually so busy lately. Like, I've been so busy with editing and stuff. We'll figure out what we're going to do with that. But thank you so much, Daphne, for that amazing email.
And I got a big storm come. Oh, I'm sure that the thing is though, with the storm spirits and everything, I'm like, yeah, I do. I bet I do. That's like, I feel like that's like a pun you just made.
So our last email for this week. Hi, Zack and B. I'm so excited about the minisode thing you guys are going to do. Yeah, we're doing it right now.
You're in it. You're in one. You best start believing in Minnesota.
Parlay. I personally think it's a great idea, as people are sending so many more emails. It just warms my heart because I love it when you guys read and react to emails, and especially when it's wholesome. That's all I really wanted to say, and yeah, have a good week, both of you. P.S. I was thinking of compiling my favorite out-of-context things you guys have said. Personally, my favorite is when Zach said, "Don't do Skype," like it's some kind of addiction. Thanks for taking the time to read my emails. I love you guys. Keep up the good work. We're literally
on Skype right now.
Yeah, we're on Skype right now. I guess I'm not taking my own advice, B.
We used Discord before, but then we had problems with Discord. I don't know. Just use whatever works and doesn't crash, I guess, which is
only use Skype responsibly. Mm-hmm. Only if you have an adult and you're 18 years or older.
The dose makes the poison, really.
Yeah, and also, if you don't know how to use Skype, make sure to ask permission from your parents first.
Yeah, seriously. That's very meta that we got this email in this episode.
So this one, so Forever Mortal William. So thank you so much, William, for this lovely email. We love it when we get wholesome stuff because you know what? It makes our days. We tear bend a little bit.
I feel like that's like a perfect one to end on.
Heck yeah.
I guess. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this episode. It's been really fun. It's kind of like fun to like just get into the headspace of responding to emails and like being able to sort of blabber on and like respond to you guys in depth. So hope you enjoy it.
And we also don't have to take notes or anything. It's like us just freeballing right now.
Yeah, it's just like I just get to like, you know, reach into the top of my brain and say whatever comes to mind. Sometimes that's not advisable, but hope you enjoy.
Yeah, I feel like this is also more like relaxed for both of us because we could just talk about random things, not worry about stay on content.
Yeah.
B, you've turned off your targeting content computer. Is everything all right? Yeah, everything's fine.
Yeah, this was really fun. You guys send such nice messages. It's a real, mood boost to read all of these back to back because you're just all so nice.
I love it so much, B. I love it so much. It's so great. Well, I think that kind of concludes this mailbag. If you didn't hear your message on air, we'll be reading it again very, very soon. Again, we have so many that we're just going through them. We're going to do them in big chunks like this to see how it goes. Because, again, this is a full episode's length of a normal episode in one go. So this is great. This is a lot of fun. B, where can they find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at bkellygorman, and you can find me on Tumblr at twinpoetry.tumblr.com.
If you want to find me on Twitter, you can find me at Suda41, that's SUDA41. If you want to follow our show on Twitter, that's at halfblood_radio. If you want to email our show, you can email us at radiocamphalblood@gmail.com. We have a Patreon/RadioCampHalfBlood. We also have t-shirts available at TeePublic, so go to www.teepublic.com. Well, I'm Zach.
I'm B.
And let's keep staying immortal, everybody. See ya.
Bye, guys.